there any time when assumptions would be useful? And why don't you, like when I think about the social climate that we're in right now with like the Me Too and the Time's Up and like one of the things that I assume, and maybe I would need to think about this, is that at least here in our culture, this stuff is treated in a way that is not good enough. And that is not aware enough. And that there's an underlying message still that it's okay for women to be treated a particular way. And that has some assumptions built in. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So I think possibly for me, I think that's being aware of the context. And I think it's really dropping anchor into, I know you for quite a while, Robyn, and I know that, gender equality is just a fundamental value of yours as it is for me. So I think when it's anchored in a value and it's being contextually aware, I think that's very helpful. I think though that we might get blinkered by it. And then also if we're then putting our life experiences onto our clients. So some clients might not have had that experience. They might have felt like, okay, well, that might be true as a whole, that might not be their individual experience. So I think then if we get blinkered by that and we're trying to kind of go down that way, we might not be talking about sexuality in a way that's helpful for that client.
Now that makes a lot of sense. And sometimes I wonder about my own process in it, right? Like, because I'm such an advocate that I might miss something. So keeping myself in check. Do you know what I'm saying about
absolutely?
Would this person, and just saying women because we're focusing on women today, actually agree with the way I'm thinking about it? And do I have a role in that as a therapist? What is my role as a therapist when I see somebody I think they're being oppressed, but they're sort of like, nah.
Yeah. So I think that's a really, really big challenge for many of us therapists. And how can we compassionately explore that a little bit further? Yet I remember a colleague of mine, I think it was Benji Schoendorf, and he said, if people tell you that something isn't a problem, probably the most compassionate thing is to respect that it's not a problem. And if it's genuinely a problem, it'll come back up again. And I think sometimes there's a little bit around that as well, because if a client comes to me and they say, look, I'm not oppressed, this feels good for me, or this feels in line with what I've been taught, and that, I think if I ask too many questions, I might actually lead to that client kind of getting more defended in line with that. So it's absolutely fine to maybe ask a gentle question in terms of, okay, I'm hearing that you're not hearing it as oppressive. And if that was happening, your best friend or your daughter or so forth, how would you view that? Okay, you still think that would be okay. And if it's a relationship for self-disclosure, okay, just say, personally, I might not find that. However, I can respect that is your opinion. And if that ever shifts or changes, can we come back and you're welcome to come back and discuss this? Because I think if we're really blinkered, we might actually, in some ways then, because there's obviously a lot being talked about with consent, and I think that's so important, but then also we don't want to be kind of forcibly trying to change our client's mind around something, because in ways we're not being given informed consent. So then in ways we may be coercing somebody in a way that may actually be traumatic for them also.
Yeah. No, I struggle with this. But I totally agree with you, because I always want my clients to know that they have choice, and that, this is, they're making their own assessments. And then I might be taking this to an argument that's too controversial or doesn't quite have the right aspects. Like, if a woman were in a violent situation, I'm going to have some clear.
Yes.
Right? But what if she's
Absolutely.
grown up in a context where it's like, well, it's not that big of a deal, or she's so disconnected from it that she minimizes it or something like that. Like, then I feel like I get like it'd be hard, right? Like, maybe
Absolutely.
I'm too far, but you see what I'm saying?
No, I don't think you are taking it too far, because I think the reality is that is the world that we live in, and that's the context in which many of us work in. In my experience, doing some perspective taking work can really, really help around that, because while somebody can say, look, that's okay, generally if I do an exercise that helps them to really connect with what it would be like for their best friend or their sister or their daughter, and connect it to somebody specific rather than, if another woman was going through this, but somebody who, and as best we can, somebody that there's a non-complicated relationship with, around them being in that situation and really connecting to that. Most women that I've worked with can kind of say, but that isn't okay. And I think then the other piece is then also bringing the compassion to why they felt that it was okay for them.
Yeah.
Because I think if we don't do that part, we're really we're feeding the shame piece in a way. Because if we're saying, look, that's not okay for anyone, somebody can feel shame of why they felt that it was okay for them.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really the duality of holding that piece of that is not okay, and I want to help you to see that, but also I can absolutely see why you thought that that was okay for you.
Yeah, I'm certainly, I think I agree with you. Most women would say, no, it's definitely not okay. But then you come across some odd context sometimes when there's violence involved, when people are super sheltered, or they're inside of a cultural situation that, sort of sees, hitting another person is not that big of a deal, or, and so like those are some interesting sort of tension places in therapy. And I really like this idea. I mean, perspective taking just completely makes sense in that area. I suppose that one of the things that I talk about myself is like, I have a stance about this, and I'm okay to say it to clients, but can support them in their choices at the same time. Does that feel okay to you, or do you think that could be slightly?
Absolutely. I would operate from a very similar vantage point, because I feel that the more honest we are with our clients, the more credible we are as speakers. And I think it's that balance between being a credible speaker and kind of sharing what our values are, and at the same time supporting clients with where they're at as well.